All right, we could talk about arson now. And I'm not going to give you the full on details because I don't have the time for it. I'm sure that most of you are pretty busy also. Um, and most of you probably won't deal a whole lot with arson, but it is interesting to kind of look at the different motivating factors, psychological reasons behind some of it. Um, so I was fortunate enough, besides being a firefighter, in addition to a state trooper, I was able to go be certified as a fire and explosive investigator through the National Association of Fire Investigators. So I learned quite a bit. I'm not going to get into that whole thing because that's separate. That's not really learning about the individual as much as it is what can you see at a fire to determine cause and origins and things like that. So anyway, hopefully you like this little screen that I have. Uh, but let's just go ahead and get started. I want to talk about the typical what we would consider pyromaniacs, in essence, arsonists, people who have some obsession with fire and the destruction that comes from fire. So, uh, a lot of them, we have a lot of arsonists who are typically younger. They can be juveniles, but a lot of times they are somewhere between the ages of, say, 16 and 28. So basically, high school through mid 20s, that kind of you obviously have some arsonists who are a little bit older than that, um, and the ones who are older, typically the reasons they will do it are different than others. So I will go ahead and throw that out there, that the top two reasons why people will commit arson, um, it's a little surprising, but one of them is revenge. But it doesn't always have to be against that particular person or the person who owns that property. And then the other one is for money, for insurance purposes or some financial gain from setting the fire. And as I alluded to earlier, the older individuals who get involved with arson are typically ones who are looking for the financial gain. Say they are falling behind on their mortgage payments, or basically don't have the money to make different payments on different pieces of property they have, whether it be a home, a garage, some other area. I say area, but some other property they have, could be a vehicle, things like that. They'll set those on fire so that they can claim some type of insurance. I had someone that basically a family or a couple of guys that I knew from around home that had done this a couple different times, and ironically, they always happened around times when they were uh, coming across some financial hardships. Another one tried to burn his barn down on, I think, three different occasions. Finally got, he did twice, he had fires and no one said much about it. Finally, on the third time, someone actually caught him. I didn't get a whole lot for it, but he was arrested. So either way, so let's move back into what we're typically looking at. Like I said, usually younger, from juvenile on to young adults, predominantly male. And the only reason I was going to say the as far as race is concerned, it actually splits up fairly close to what the racial demographics are for where you live. More whites get arrested for it, but it's because there are more whites that live who there are more whites in the U.S., for example. But that's not a big deal. Most of them do have some type of mental health issue. Uh, this isn't someone who just tries it one. I say once, being like, oh, they enjoy burning leaves, or this is an entirely different thing. This is someone who truly uh, is setting fire to property that typically is not theirs, or at least it's some form of destruction. Okay, that is the purpose of what they're doing, is destruction. They tend to be either sociopathic or psychopathic. Also, some of them may struggle with some type of obsessive compulsive disorder. Could be neurotic. But those are different things. Educational wise, um, most of them that you ever come across that we've arrested, things like that, typically the highest education they will have is a high school degree. I say degree, high school diploma, um, if they get that far. But the vast majority of them at least do finish high school. But beyond that, not much. Um, they tend to have some sexual issues, maladjustments, basically not much of a sex life, not much luck in that regards. So you'll find out, or you're finding out with a lot of these people that have some psychological issues, serial murders, rapists, arsonists, you name it. Besides mental issues, they also, for a multitude of reasons, are sexually maladjusted. So, yeah, keep that in mind. Typically, they have jobs that are menial jobs, labor type jobs. Maybe they feel like what they do is some of them will start fires at the different businesses they work or properties that the uh, owners own outside of that or possess outside of their workplace. They'll set those on fire out of revenge or resentment. Uh, so that's something else to keep in mind, or even just resentment for other people having things. So let's see what else I want to tell you about them. They in terms of setting fires, they can be, some of them, even though they don't have a high level of education that they reached, a lot of them can still be fairly neat and intelligent and methodical what they do. Um, and they have some type of craving for power or feel like they um, lack it. And that's where the fire, they are the ones setting the fire. They're the ones that are basically responsible. So to them, that gives them some form of power, and they like that. So keep that in mind. Um, and sometimes they just love the thrill of it. For example, unfortunately, I've known and come across in this general area of a couple different cases of, say, volunteer firefighters, especially younger ones who've been on there that feel like they're bored. So they will go out and set, say, dumpster fires, or they'll set other fires, abandoned trailers, homes, etc., so that they have some excitement to go to. And yeah, so if you are that person or you know anybody that fits that description, first of all, you should probably get some help, or they should get some help. But then the other thing is, um, just because you're responding to it and because it's an abandoned building doesn't mean you aren't going to be held responsible in terms of the law. If you find an abandoned trailer somewhere, chances are someone somewhere owns it or owns the property it sits on. So therefore, yeah, that's arson, and you're going to be criminally liable for it. A lot of your arsonists, depending on how good they are, if you want to say that, most of the time they use simple things. The simple things that they get caught using in terms of like how they start fires, whatever, will be um, matches that like match books that they leave, matches themselves that sometimes survive the fires, uh, cigarettes. Those are basically a lot of times people, besides the fact that they can start a fire, sometimes cigarettes can be used almost like a fuse. So it gives that person some time to get out of the area. But yeah, like I said, it's a number of ways to start fires. And I'm not going to really sit here and tell you all the different ways to start fires and how to get away with different things. But just keep in mind, most people, I know that some of them, some people that do smoke, they have accidental fires that take place. They fall asleep and the cigarettes on the couch or whatever. Okay, yeah, that can happen. But it's when it's an abandoned place, when it's someone who doesn't ever smoke, and those are the things they find at the scene, that's a pretty good indication that that was the item that was used to actually set the fire or start it. So, moving on from that, though, let's see, anything else I want to tell you? Um, a lot of times, this impulse to set fires um, also comes from things like an accumulation of problems, stressors, frustration, tension, things like that. Thwarted sexual desires, meaning someone wanted to, they have sexual desires, but either someone shut them down, or else they just don't have the personality type to really to get anyone's interest. Okay, that could be that. Losing a job, something significant that happened, some significant loss, like a loss of a loved one, loss of a job, any stressors like that we talked about earlier on in the semester can, kind of influence this person into, needing in their mind, they have an outlet of some sort, and that's the fire setting. And it can be, you know, um, they may set up, buildings, schools, hotels, other structures. Um, Sometimes they just want the attention, and that's another reason why they may set a fire. Like I said, going back to the excitement and attention, with the volunteer firefighters that I've mentioned earlier, you also have that same mentality that will go and set fires just simply um, to watch the fire department, EMS, police show up, watch the public gather around. That's kind of what they do. They used to say, "Oh, sit and watch someone," and the person would stand there, in essence, masturbating. I'm not saying it doesn't ever happen. That's a person. That's the one that's going to be the arsonist. That doesn't always. That's not always the case, but a lot of times, the individual who sets that fire, um, if they're a true pyromaniac, um, they will be either on scene to where, like if it's in public with other people, or if it's out in the country, sometimes you may see someone watching it from a distance. Um, that's something else to investigate. Go and talk to those people. Maybe they can give you information about what they saw, or they can give you information about, that might indicate that they were responsible for it. So, um, a lot of times there's no, as far as we talking about serial type crimes, there's not really a what you and I would call, like a set period of how often they set fires. Basically, they're just going to set fires whenever they feel a desire to do it and keep doing it until they get caught. They typically do it at night. For one, better concealment. That's probably the biggest thing. And they sometimes feel more comfortable in the nighttime, just like we said, other people who have uh, trouble dealing with other people, social issues, or anything like that tend to favor the nighttime anyway. Um, so another reason, I'll get to some of these. Actually, I don't want to state that just yet because I'll get to it in a little bit. So sometimes you'll, before the fire setting stages, family members, if you ever ask them, I know this is hard to, it's not like we always see these things until later, and we look back at retrospectively and say, oh, well, beforehand, basically, sometimes you'd see people besides mounting tensions, they'd also have, anxiety, headaches, things like that. But then also, just sometimes, now some people report ringing in the ears, and then just this uncontrollable urge to set fires. But then during the actual fire setting time frame, or when they're going to do it, they tend to disassociate from other people that they even do come in contact with, so being quiet, etc. And then afterwards, there's kind of this relief. The tension that this person did have subsides, and a few of them, a small percentage of them, have some type of sexual satisfaction that they achieve. Remember, like if we go back to some of the killers that we talked about, it wasn't the sex act that they got excited about. It's the fact of the process of killing someone, like the hedonistic lust killer. The process of killing someone excited them sexually. Okay, that's what we're talking about here. It's the fact they set the fire. It's not like there's anything else going on, but they get that same feeling of satisfaction that they would otherwise. And then I think what I'm going to do is I'm unfortunately going to have to make another video for you. And I say unfortunately, but I wasn't able to cover it as quickly as I thought I would. So I'm going to go ahead and make another video for that, and then I also have one just to kind of sum things up for the semester. Talk to you soon.